you having a desire to serve, that's a beautiful thing. I have a desire to serve. I don't want to be exploited. I don't want you to take my desire to serve and turn me into a modern day slave of your church and then throw Jesus glitter jargon all over it. Come every weekend with your fresh yes. You about to get this fresh no. You about to get a really fresh, sizzling no from me. Are you going to do my admin stuff? Are you going to come back with the admin? No, I'm not going to be able to do that. Oh my God. Will you be helping us with the... No, I won't be able to. Oh my God. What's going on? I will continue to give God my yes. You're going to start getting my no's. I just got married. I'm going home. We're going to brunch. We get here before the church service begins and we don't leave until the parking lot's empty and we miss brunch. We're going to brunch. I'm going to Cheesecake Factory before they stop selling the Belgian waffle.
You're so refreshing, Tim. I'm so grateful for you.
I love you, girl. I get really defensive and overprotective. That's my apostolic nature. I don't like to see people being taken advantage of. Again, your pastors, I know they're good people. They're just running antiquated plays.
No.
And their turnover rate in their volunteer department, I know you're not the only one. You're just the latest one.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Relate to You. We are so excited to see you guys again. And as you saw from the beginning of this video, we are going to be talking about burnout. And some of you guys might have been like, yes to everything that he was saying. Some of you guys might have gotten triggered, like, who is this person? Well, today we are going to break it down. And so first and foremost, what is burnout, Lula? If you can explain, what is that?
Man, and just in general?
In layman's terms.
Yeah, being tired of a certain activity or certain job, certain lifestyle, certain responsibilities. Yeah.
I think for me, burnout is, yes, that fatigue, but it always has discouragement and some kind of negative emotion attached to it. Resentment. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's bitterness. Sometimes for some it's even depression. There's just all of these negative emotions that are sometimes just the byproduct of burnout.
Right.
And obviously this is a podcast where we tend to talk a lot about our faith, and we're not going to be focusing so much on burnout when it comes to school or burnout when it comes to our jobs. We're going to talk a little bit more about burnout in the church, burnout in ministry, and what that exactly looks like. And so when it comes to ministry, Lula, for you, why do you think that there are people that feel burnt out?
I think it's their priorities are out of order. I think that's why a lot of people are getting burned out, because we don't have our priorities in check. And that's one thing. And then another thing is because we also don't know how to say, I think most of us know how to say no, but we don't know how, when you have committed to something, we don't know how to say then, you know what, never mind, I might have overcommitted.
I would disagree. I would actually think, I agree with we don't have our priorities in line. But I actually think that burnout, it comes from two reasons, in my opinion. I think it comes from the source, which is usually the leadership of whoever, is in expectation of, I expect you to do this. And burnout also comes from within. It comes from the individual that I think oftentimes doesn't know how to say no. I think when it comes to church matters, it's very difficult to say no because you're doing things for the kingdom. And I think that and again, this is my opinion, and this is also maybe also how I'm approaching ministry in a sense. I think that I have experienced burnout, and I do think it came from a place where, yes, my priorities were not in check, but it also came from a place of I did not know how to say no to certain things. I was in praise team, I was in juniors, I was in church, I was in a lot of different areas when I felt like I was drowning in work and I was drowning in responsibilities, and I was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And that caused bitterness. And that caused burnout. And I think it also came because I didn't know how to set boundaries. As far as, wait a second, I am living at church, but I don't have a relationship with God.
Key. And I think that's key. Now, we're not here to tell no one what their relationship status with God is, up to you. But I do think that por sus frutos se le conocerá, right? So I do think that sometimes those are symptoms of not having a relationship with God, or having one that is just here and there, and ever so often me acuerdo de él, and ever so often I pray, and ever so often me acuerdo that, I need to read or whatever.
Right.
And it happens. And I do think también es un poquito de, y esto se va a escuchar fuerte, pero idealization. Tenemos ídolos en nuestras vidas. Entonces, for example, and I'm guilty of this, we idolize a relationship. We idolize motherhood. Entonces, se te hace realidad esto que you've been, la verdad, idolizing for a while.
I know where you're going.
You've been idolizing for a while, and now it's like, it's because I'm a mother. It's because I'm in a relationship. Y todo eso. That's why I said I do think people are now, it's easier to say no. Because you have that attitude of like, I just recently got married. I mean, this guy literally just said that.
Yes.
I recently got married. Bye.
But there's also scripture in the Bible where when a man would get married, he was not allowed to go to war.
Yeah. No. I don't think the issue is having a family or being married or or being a mother. No. I think the issue is when you commit fully knowing you can't commit or you shouldn't commit.
I don't think that's always fair.
Or if you don't know, you can commit and you commit and then you realize, man, I can't because I have other kids, I have my husband or whatever. I think then the burnout comes with not being clear about, you know what? I might have said yes, pero no puedo.
I see the reason why I disagree with that thought is because I don't think that ministry is easy. No. I don't think that ministry is ever laid out in a way that is fully convenient to your time and your season. And I think that no matter how you approach it, te va a costar tiempo, te va a costar de tu carácter, and it's going to require sacrifice out of you. And so I don't think that sometimes it's like you didn't know what you were getting yourself into. I don't think that anyone who ever gets into ministry knows necessarily the things that they're going to face, because it's going to test areas in their life that needs to be developed and used for the kingdom. So I feel like
more power to me, no? To my point.
In what way?
Because then we do go in not having informed decisions. We don't. I think again, it's out of priority.
If your point is, if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, why do you get into it? That's where I have an issue.
No, even because I agree. Sometimes we might say yes, right, out of obedience.
Correct.
Out of obedience, and then once you're in there, you're like, man, ¿en qué me metí?
Correct.
I agree, pero entonces I do think que ahí at that point. If you don't want to sacrifice, then leave.
I do agree with that.
Then leave.
I do
¿verdad?
Agree with that.
Pero no podemos estar en una situación donde sí quiero sacrificar, pero when it's convenient to me. No, o sea, porque entonces no solamente do you suffer, because now you're on your way to burnout, but you make others suffer along with you. Your ministry suffers, your family suffers, all around you suffer. Entonces, I do think that especialmente here's wisdom. We need to exercise a lot of wisdom. Si yo me acabo de casar, ¿verdad? Y como dices tú, es bíblico que cuando uno se casa, uno se puede tomar un tiempo. Entonces yo no voy a andar diciéndole a todo el mundo, yes.
Pero, Lula.
Pero si lo voy a hacer.
Pero, Lula, hay necesidad.
Por eso digo, pero si lo voy a hacer y yo veo la necesidad, pues entonces me aguanto.
Pero no todos tienen tu carácter. No todos tienen
Exacto,
un carácter
exacto.
que mi palabra es final. Mi es sí y mi no es no.
Eso,
Hay
exacto.
muchas personas que they romanticize the idea of serving and the kingdom and all of that.
Entonces,
And then once
we
they're
go
in
back
there,
to-
pero a lot of people don't leave because for them it's like, I can't leave. I made a commitment. There is a need. I have to show up. And the problem with that is that when the individual does not feel like they can leave, yes, the ministry suffers. Whatever they're serving in that moment will suffer. But I also think sometimes we don't know how to teach people how to make appropriate boundaries and how to know for themselves what they can and can't do.
Well, I think
And I'm also speaking from experience because I took a year off. So
this is why
I'm
we're
also
gonna have different difference of opinions.
Lula
porque-
is living in ministry.
Yes.
Like that is more Lula than anything else. Church admin.
Yes, but at the same time, I do think it has a lot to do with my character. Yo soy de esas de las de dije yes y se acabó.
Pero no te sufres when you're doing that?
Pero sí, yes, I agree 100%. Pero entonces ahí yo tengo una decisión. I always have a choice.
Claro.
Do I continue to suffer or do I change my attitude?
Claro.
Right? Or let's say there's even another option, not just two options. I don't want to suffer. I can't say no.
And I won't do it at all.
And I won't do it at all.
Right.
Entonces, there's always options. I think que la gente nos cerramos cuando luego decimos, como dijiste tú, when someone feels they can't leave. No, you can. You just have to bear
The
the consequences. Entonces, eso es a lo que yo voy con el burnout. ¿Por qué dejamos llegar hasta ese punto cuando siempre vas a tener opciones? Siempre va a haber. Now, is it true that it's hard to say no? Absolutely, 100%. Is it true to leave when you know you can clearly see there's a need and no one's stepping up to the plate? Yes, 100%. Pero entonces, again, tienes otra opción. Or you change your attitude or you continue to be better. And te dejas hacer burned out. Entonces, I think it's all about wisdom. Si nosotros, porque for example, en la Biblia, todo mundo that stepped up for some type of ministry sacrificed a lot. Entonces, si nosotros leyéramos la Biblia for what it truly is, y no por, ay, qué bonito el servir, ay, qué bonito el esto. No, pero realmente decir, algunos se murieron. Algunos nunca se casaron.
Claro.
Algunos perdieron su familia.
Nunca se casaron.
Algunas nunca se casaron. Algunos perdieron familia.
Yeah.
¿Verdad? O sea, entonces, si lo leemos for what it is, then we wouldn't come into ministry thinking, ay, qué bonito servir y qué todo eso. Porque entonces lo veríamos for what it is. I will sacrifice. Parts of me will die.
Yo digo que a veces las circunstancias te pueden llevar a esa situación. Let's use Moses as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Moses was called by the Lord, and might I add, oftentimes begrudgingly. Many times was, I'm slow to speak, and why do you choose me? Mm-hmm. And he put even Aaron as a spokesperson for him. But even Moses had a difficulty balancing his responsibilities. He had put so much on him. ¿Quién más puede tener sabiduría que Moisés, que hablaba con Jesús, que hablaba con Dios y lo miraba cara a cara? Aún él, su propio suegro, le tuvo que decir, you're going to wear yourself out.
Yeah.
You need to appoint respectable and God-fearing men that they can help you. I also think that sometimes that also is the reason why we are burnt out.
Yeah,
we're using the same people for multiple responsibilities. And that person, I don't always think it's because they don't want to have the right attitude or because they don't want to have wisdom. Sometimes it's, I'm the only one that can do this. And there's no one else that can do this, or we think that no one else can do this. And in the case of Moses himself, he had to delegate.
Yes, but entonces, then I think the word burnout, then it's the wrong thing to describe it as.
Why?
Because entonces, si lo vamos a tomar el ejemplo de Moisés nunca se fue. No dejó el ministry.
Not many people leave when they're burned out.
Yes, pero they become bitter.
Pero Moses was getting to a point where he was worn out.
Well, Moisés, por su carácter, was always someone that was a flare up, you know.
Right.
Muchas cosas eran like, no, no. O sea, él en su carácter ya era así.
Okay.
Ya era así. Ahora, I do agree that a lot of the issue is not knowing how to delegate. You can still be in the ministry and learn how to delegate. And that will a lot of the times help you out in many ways, right? I had to learn how to delegate, especially when you left. I had to learn, I really need to lean on other people porque yo no puedo hacer todo.
Right.
Clearly. And so I do think pero again, I was tired, yes, 100%. But I don't think I was burned out.
You don't.
I do think I went through those lows and highs, but I wasn't burned out. To me, burned out means you're gonna leave.
I don't agree with that. I don't think burned out means that you're going to leave. I think there
So
are
then you
circumstances that lead you to that point of like, ya no puedo. But I do think that sometimes burnt out is when you see a volunteer, you see a leader, and everything that comes out of their mouth is discouragement. It's negativity. It's a chip on their shoulder that they can't get off. The spirit of do it and do it gladly is not there.
Right. But is there change?
What do you mean, is there change?
Yeah, because I do think I've gone through that of like where I was very negative, where I was very, again, I planted in my head, you have options. You can't continue to think negatively. You could change. Entonces, that's what I'm saying. Like, then what you're saying is someone can stay in ministry for years on end.
And be burnt out.
And be burnt and be negative, ¿verdad? That can happen. That can happen. Pero entonces, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, it's obviously a bad thing.
Why? Si lo están haciendo de todas maneras.
No. I think here's the thing. I think we disagree in the sense that for you, you think burnt out is something that is for a time and has an end. And there's no like change after that. And if someone has burnt out symptoms or they're going through a burnout season, but they come out of it, that somehow that wasn't burnout. I disagree with that. I firmly believe that if you go through a season where you were burnt out, whether you came out of that because of God's grace or not, you were still burnt out at some point. Now, maybe you had the maturity and the wisdom to come out of it. Praise God for that. Give glory to God for that. But I don't think that everybody's result is always that they're going to leave. There's also circumstances that cause burnout. In my case, part of the burnout was, yes, I was saying yes to a lot of things. My priorities were out of whack, and my dad died. So you had a situation where, yes, God was not first in my life. Therefore, my reaction to a very difficult situation did not give me the ability to respond in the right way to the other responsibilities that I was dealing with. A lot of individuals that go through loss, any kind of difficulty in their lives, it reveals that, oh, shoot, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Your relationship with God was not where it should because the way you're being broken right now, not that being broken and grieving is wrong, but what I'm trying to say is that it reveals that there's a disconnect.
Where was your spiritual life?
Where was your spiritual life? And so I think that in my case, for my health, mental health, emotional health, it was the right decision for me to leave. And that's why I can come back into ministry with a different mindset, because I do think I grew from that. But I don't think that's the case for everyone. I think some people go through burnout seasons and they don't necessarily have to walk away. And through the process, God reveals to them the wisdom that they could have probably gone through had they stepped away, but they didn't have to. And I think that that's maybe more maturity for certain people.
Well, I mean,
again, my opinion.
I think in the main, I think how we go about burnout, that's where we are having the difference of opinion. But I think we can agree that burnout happens when those are the three main reasons, or maybe more. But for us, at least, we can agree that it's because our priorities are not straight, because we are saying yes to a lot of things. And that doesn't, that I don't know why. Maybe again, maybe I'm having a hard time with language. Maybe I'm having a hard time with, because I feel like saying things like boundaries,
why does that trigger you? Why does it bother you that someone would want to put a boundary in ministry? When your family, when God, and then your marriage, and then your children should come first in your life.
Right.
Why would it be wrong for you to put boundaries in ministry?
Boundaries is a new word of the 2020, of the modern world.
Okay, I guess.
First world problems. This is not happening in Africa. This is not happening in India.
There it is.
This is not happening in China, the underground churches. This is literally, if anything, it's even an American thing.
Okay.
You know, and I think that's why I'm having a hard time with language.
I think
because it's like I feel like a lot of us are using this type of language to sound smart and to sound like again, to sound like it's me first.
I think we can both agree. I do not agree that someone should prioritize their family above all things or their marriage above all things. That is not what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
The same way how you mentioned that, we have idols. I do think someone can make an idol out of their marriage
absolutely.
or an idol out of their children.
Yeah.
100%. But I don't think it's wrong to say no to certain commitments when you are already serving. If you are already serving,
100%. Agree.
Now, if we're talking about an individual, they're like, hey, bro, can you come on a random Saturday and clean the church? And that's not a leader. And they don't volunteer. And that person throws no, I need to set a boundary because I only come on Sundays. That's a very different debate. If we're talking about a leader who, comes and has a life group, or a person who's a Sunday school teacher, or I don't know, whatever the role is, and they're being asked to do something on top of what they're already expected to do, and they're looked down upon, I disagree with that.
Oh,
I don't think that's something like, ¿cómo es posible que la hermana no quiso venir a hacer el talento de las flor azul o lo que sea porque prefirió ir, quiso quedar los dos servicios y se fue for Spanish because it's her anniversary. Like that, to me, I don't agree with.
No. There's a lot of nuances to that, however. I think for me, because I'm on this end, and I've heard it all and seen it all, I think it's hard to give people sometimes the benefit of the doubt when they say yes, and then last minute is like, oh, never mind.
Right.
I think that's why we're probably having this difference of opinions. Obviously, like right now that you planted that whole scenario, yes, there's no way a sane leader is going to hold it against that person. Hey, he shows up on time whenever he said yes.
Right.
He comes and he does things. He's here, whatever.
So but for you, it's them not keeping their word to their current commitments.
Yes.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with boundaries. How is
that's
that
what
person...
I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I don't like that word because our people are using it for that.
You're saying
people are using it. Oh my God, I said yes to this, but then this came up. And I have to say no because I have to set up boundaries.
Got it.
Yes, you see,
Okay,
that's what I'm saying. People are using that word very loosely. Very loosely. Why? Because it serves them a purpose. It doesn't serve no one a purpose. It serves them a purpose. If I use the word boundaries, now I sound like, if I tell you, this is me putting boundaries, are you really going to fight me on that?
No, I don't see any. Again, I'm not triggered by the word.
I am.
I don't see
because
it
I have
as a
things,
negative thing. And I know you're going to get triggered by what I'm about to say, so prepárate. I do think it's because you're not married. I do think it's because you're not in that season right now. No, I know. No, I'll be honest with you. And I know for a lot of people, I understand you because I've had the same mentality.
Right.
I've been in that situation where it's like, ay, porque está casada. Porque tiene sus hijos y sus chiquillos and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that sentiment. But until I was in this season in my life, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that marriage actually has a responsibility that can affect.
But how then do you explain when this wasn't a thing? When people were married and they were still serving. How then would you explain when you see couples now that have a lot of kids, that are married, and they still manage to come and serve?
I would say let's look at those couples today.
Exactly. Entonces,
la mayoría de esas personas que su vida era ministerio, esos matrimonios no funcionaron. Esos matrimonios, La mayoría.
Again,
I'm not talking
porque
about
volvemos
todos.
a las prioridades.
Sí, Lola. Entonces, por eso te digo, claro, si removemos that exception of those few people that are wise in everything that they do and they prioritize everything right and great, we're removing them out of the equation. I'm talking about the general public, the human public, who doesn't always have their priorities straight. I do think that if we looked at the past, a lot of those couples that church was life, not all of those couples are together today.
I
Not a lot
agree.
of those kids are even in church today.
I agree 100%. And again, priorities are out of whack.
Claro.
Right? And I understand that idea, well, not idea, but that principle, biblical principle of God first, your marriage, then your children, 100%. I think anything in between that will not survive or will make it harder for people, right? But I don't think that's my issue. My issue is when people overcommit at those lines, and then they use that as an excuse to not deliver. Now, are there situations where it was a last minute thing? My kid got sick. Come on.
No, claro.
100%.
Yeah.
Dude, yes. Again, what sane leader is going to hold that against that person or that minister or, hermana o dorca, lo que sea? No. I mean, maybe there are. And that is why we're having this conversation.
No, yeah.
Right? But that's what I'm thinking. But have I seen and have I been on the receiving end of, oh, yes, I said yes, but I'm not gonna show up.
I think
whatever.
I think at that point, I 100% understand you. I do not think that people should commit to things, and if there's a repetition in a leader,
there's always a
that is
pattern.
constantly canceling, then that is the responsibility of the leadership to remove them.
But
That to me, if you have someone that cannot keep their word, and this is the fourth time, that to me,
I agree.
that's a sign of like, you know what, maybe you shouldn't be in leadership.
100%.
And yes, are people going to walk away? No, porque people like titles and people have reasons why they're in there, what they're in, and I do think at that point it's responsibility of the management, to be like, you know what, we're going to find someone else.
100%.
So I can understand, especially as a church admin, how that can be frustrating because one leader's effort in one thing impacts all the others.
Yeah.
And
not only that, but you're counting on people.
I think for me, I'm not thinking about those people because I'm not considering those people as committed individuals. What I'm talking about is committed individuals who get burned out.
Okay, in that sense, I think that it's a double-edged sword, because on one end, you said it right now. Hay personas que sirven con un corazón contento, con alegría y gozo, ¿verdad? Entonces, ¿qué pasa? Esas personas quieren estar en todos lados también. Quieren decir sí a todo, porque están sirviendo con un corazón contento y alegre.
Yeah, at some point.
And at some point, it gets to them. And that is normal. I don't think I'm fighting that. Mm-hmm. I think for me is and yes, I would agree that it comes down to leadership también, ¿verdad? Que a veces usamos a una persona para muchas otras cosas.
And that's wrong. That shouldn't happen.
And that is wrong, but at the same time, lo acabamos de decir, there are no committed people. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que vas a hacer tú? Por ejemplo, yo as an admin, because I have done it. I know I'm guilty of this. I'm going to go to the one I know is going to come through.
I get that.
Now, if that person tells me, sabes que se me hace mucho, I'm tired.
Pero sí o no, Lula, cuando esa persona a veces dicen que no, they get mad. ¿Cómo es posible que la hermana Kesia no quiera hacer esto? And it's like, bro, I'm at my like here. And that one time, yes, I'm a committed person and I'll show up, but because I don't want to do this one thing, now I'm looked at bad. That is something I have an issue with.
I agree. And
I think that's what causes burnout. That is what causes individuals to say, I can't say no.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I agree. I agree with that. There is an issue. There is a problem with that. Of like, el día que digo no, hombre, ya casi me quieren sacar de la iglesia, ¿verdad? O del ministerio or whatever. And I think ahí sí es un problema de tu líder. And I think also how well appreciated you are or not appreciated. Because sometimes La verdad, en el ministerio, muy, muy rara la vez te van a apreciar.
That's true.
A lot of what we do lo tenemos que hacer para el Señor.
I
Punto.
wouldn't even say that's biblical.
Being appreciated?
No, that's not
it's
biblical.
not biblical. Porque
Tú lo haces porque amas
quieres
a Dios y
Ajá,
quieres
y
expandir el
I think and I
kingdom.
think también es importante to look at why we say yes to all these things. You know, I think a lot of people, and again, I could be wrong, but it comes from ego. Ay, me pidieron que hablara en este
I
lugar.
agree.
Ay, es que me están diciendo que les ayude en esto. Ay, es que si no soy yo, lo dijiste hace ratito, si no soy yo, nadie más lo va a hacer.
Yes, I agree.
I do think it comes out of an egotistic place of, pues sí, I'm so great. I'm being asked to speak at all these places, at all these events. I'm being asked to represent this and that, and I'm being asked to, because I'm so talented, blah, 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 blah. So I do think that once we deal with that, maybe it can be easy to say, I don't need to be on the spotlight.
So is your argument that the only people that suffer burnout are people that are joining from a burnout or from an egocentric?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all. No, I do think there are a lot more people that get burned out because they want to do it and they say yes because there's a need.
Or for the right reasons.
And for the right
Because
reasons.
people want to serve.
Yeah, and because they want to serve. Yes, I do think the vast majority, that's what happens, which is why they never leave. Because they still have that in their hearts of like, no, I want to do it. I know it's a passion. I know I like what I do.
And there's a blessing attached.
And there's a blessing attached to it. But I do think that a lot of the times we have to search our hearts. We have to realize, why am I saying yes to so much when clearly I'm tired, when clearly no puedo? Is there anything that I can delegate? Sea como sea.
Pero Lulis, a veces no hay ayuda.
100%.
A veces
I
no
agree.
hay nadie.
Entonces,
yo no siento que a veces eso viene de un corazón que está really egocentric or anything. I think sometimes there's really no help.
No,
You know?
100%.
And sometimes you're the only person that can do it, and you're doing it, and you're doing it, and you're doing it. And at some point, you're so busy with life and with ministry and whatever other responsibility you have that you find yourself in a place where you're burned out. And yes, I do think sometimes that's where you need to search your heart. But let's be honest, when you're in a burnout season, a lot of the times your relationship with God is disconnected. What person is going to be like, okay, ahorita que I've been so disconnected from God, I know the right thing to do right now is to search my heart. Nobody thinks that. What ends up happening is
Entonces, it's a lack of spiritual maturity. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I do think.
Okay.
I do think that is the case for a lot of people.
Yeah, then
And
that speaks volumes.
I think, and what I'm getting at is that I think as a church, we have a responsibility to listen to what is being said, to pay attention to the symptoms that we see. Wait, you know what? Lula's talking a little funny right now. Lula is saying and doing some things that speak of a burnout season.
That's a double-edged sword. Porque then you come and you tell the person, I've seen you tired, I'm going to let you out. Ya no lo hagas. En la gente se ofende. No ganas, ¿qué es? No vas a ganarle a la gente, nunca. Nunca vas a quedar bien con nadie. Por eso, y lo digo como Armen y lo digo como alguien that volunteers. Lo digo on both ends. Nunca vas a quedar bien con nadie. Por eso maldito el que cree en el hombre.
Claro.
Por eso maldito el que hace el trabajo para to please someone else.
Right.
Porque entonces you fall into that. But at the same time, I do agree that there are people, very good people, with good intentions, that out of loyalty, out of respect for pastor, out of respect for my leader, out of respect for the church, for God, they overcommit, or they're everywhere doing everything and they're in charge and they're the only ones that have the knowledge to do that. I do think that those people deserve to be supported. But at the same time, cuando les intentas ayudar, hay de que you're taking away my thing.
My thing.
That's what I'm saying. You need to search your heart. Now, is it hard to do that while you're going through it? 100%. But I think por eso es que es importante ser una persona disciplinada. Cuando tú eres una persona disciplinada, cuando tú eres una persona disciplinada en lo secular, vamos a decir, en tu forma de comer, en tu forma de hablar, en tu forma de ejercitarte, en tu forma de vivir tu vida, se te va a hacer fácil tener una disciplina espiritual. Entonces, ¿qué es una disciplina? Para mí, ¿qué es una disciplina espiritual? Todos los días me levanto, no me levanto. Bueno, nos podemos levantar con una intención, ¿verdad? Pero en las noches, I do this. What did I do wrong today? God, search my heart. Allow me to see where I messed up. And a lot of times, you do know. Es más, in fact, as soon as you said it, like como le estabas diciendo ahorita, oh, Lula está hablando raro. I know in my heart of hearts that was bad of me. That whatever it...
Yo digo, no, I don't think so, Lula. I think we've talked about this a lot, about self-awareness. I do not think people walk around with self-awareness.
No.
I don't think people are like, you know what? I'm speaking negative.
Yeah.
No.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. One, you need to surround yourself with people that will call you out on that, which is why we are so great at each other.
That's why you're watching this podcast.
Which is why you're watching this podcast, because we have done that to each other. This is not you. What's going on? Right? And then we allow ourselves the space to be like, well, I've been feeling tired. Well, you need to take care of that because, that's not the attitude.
Right.
Or you were very hurtful earlier. What's going on? I know that's not you. So, ¿qué está pasando? Entonces, again, you need someone to hold you accountable. Y entonces, alguien que de alguna forma, como dices tú, si a ti no se te va a venir por arte de magia el pensar, oh, maybe I need to speak to God. Entonces, surround yourself with people that you know for sure will tell you, you need to pray.
Yeah.
My mom is one of those. You are one of those.
I do think that in the video, the things that I disagree with him is, one, his attitude. And the way that he's saying no, and I'm going to go to Cheesecake Factory before they, serve the last Belgian waffle or whatever. Or I think that attitude and that entitlement for boundaries, I do think that's wrong.
Yeah, I 100%.
But I also think that we have to learn to say no.
We always talk about balance.
Yes.
And with ministry, I think it's very hard to find that balance. It's hard to say, I want to work, but this is where I can help.
Not only that, we have to argue, is balance biblical?
Exactly.
If we look at the book of Acts and we look at the apostles,
they
were giving their entire life, their time. I mean, they even shared all of their resources together, and that's how they would live off. I mean, you look at Paul and he goes from city to city to city to city to city for a year, for months, for however long, establishing churches. That doesn't look like balance to me. That looks like, hey, there's an urgency in the fact that Jesus is coming soon.
Right.
People are lost and we need to save them. And so I do agree in the sense that this is a first world problem. But I also don't think it's good to invalidate that we do live in a first world country.
Yes, 100%.
And I think that within the means of where we're located and the context of where we are in society, I do think it is important to have wisdom for where we are at. And that's where I feel like when we give these examples of like, you wouldn't see this in Africa, you wouldn't see this in South America. We're not in South America. We're not in Africa. We're in California, specifically in this area where the vibe here is very different if you were in Texas. So I think that some of the things, while yes, we have to use the word of God to guide us, that book was written for people that were there for a specific time, doing something at a specific setting. And yes, it still speaks to us today. La palabra es viva y eficaz, but we also can't neglect where we're at in time. And because of that, I don't think it's right to be like, bueno, los apóstoles no tenían balance, so we shouldn't have balance either. That's not the context in where we're at. I think we have to have wisdom with where are we right now? What is the need in our culture? If not, Paul would not have written his letters the way he did. A lot of the letters were specific to the society that was in that location. And he wrote in that way. We also have to have the wisdom of like, okay, what is the need here? And bring race into it. We're Hispanics, we're in California, we're in a first world country. There's a lot of things layered on as to what our current cultural context is. So I do think that sometimes, while yes, again, I go back, no, I don't think that we should have the entitlement of no. And that attitude, no, I do think that we should still have joy and our yes should mean yes. But I also think we have to have wisdom with where are we at in the time? That's my perspective. That's just the way I see it.
I think for me, a mí sí me ayuda en pensar en otras iglesias en otros países. Porque it puts into perspective my little problems.
I agree.
And so I do think, I agree that yes, that is not where we're at. That is not our environment. That is not who we're surrounded by, right? But I think for me, just personal, for me, it does help, like, it does help to see them and be like, man, you know, my Starbucks cup is the least of my problems.
100% estoy de acuerdo contigo.
Entonces,
Para ti. Pero
yes.
tú no puedes tener esa expectativa para todo mundo.
No, and I don't have it. I don't have it, and I don't hold people. I think what I was getting at is that we use language to serve us, and that's what I said. You don't see that word being used in these places, and I don't think that has to do with demographics and you know, and locations and certain things. No, I think it has to do with we use language to manipulate. We use language to better serve my situation.
I would agree.
And so I think that's what I said. That's what I like to use those churches or those environments, because it's like, no, todos at the end of the day, we estamos viviendo lo mismo. El servir. El servir. No en las mismas circunstancias, pero el servir. Entonces, si una persona en China está poniendo su vida, en, you know, their life on the line to serve God, why can't I do something? Not the same, but what is stopping me from having some sacrifice in my own surroundings, in my own capacities?
I'm not disagreeing with you about sacrifice at all. But I also think that you're using one example to be like, well, in China, you know, they would be giving it their all. Yes, maybe. They would be definitely dealing with the government that they're dealing with, but you don't know what specific cultural context issues they're dealing in their current world. That has nothing to do with us here. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have humility or compassion or anything like that.
No, es que tú te quieres ir a lo específico. No estoy hablando de específicos.
I do think that if you were in China and you grew up in China, they would be having their own issues.
100%.
And they would also be looking of like their own thing. And I do agree that we should sacrifice. But I also think that it's important for you to know where we're at and how we can reach the current audience that we're in.
Yes.
That's my thing.
Yes, I do agree. But again, how would you measure that when people are using language here and there, así, willy-nilly? How would you measure that?
Again, you're using examples of people who've overcommitted and they're not fulfilling those commitments. You're just focusing on that one example, not the general public of those few people or many people who are actually committed and saying yes.
Entonces we go back to my point. Entonces, when you do listen y les quitas un cargo, ahora se sienten esas personas.
No todos.
La mayoría.
No todos.
La mayoría.
Algunos, they feel seen. Algunos pueden decir, I needed someone to reach
pero
out.
Entonces te regreso lo que me estás diciendo. Te estás enfocando en un grupo muy pequeño que es.
No, I agree. We're talking about burnout in general.
Exactly.
We're talking about multiple people, yes.
Exactly.
But I'm also saying that sometimes I do think that as a church, regardless if the percentage is great or not, I don't think that should be an excuse why we should never reach out to someone and say, hey, you're sounding a little like this, and let me reach out to you and let me see how you're doing. Just because, se va a ofender. Or if I try to remove a responsibility, I don't think that's right.
I'll give you an example. Okay. Vamos a decir, random 5 people. Out of those 5 people that you went up to, three you were met with attitude of like, what? No, I'm good. Mm-hmm. For those other 2, are you going to do it?
Why not?
Kiss. Just out of the statistics. You might do it. But you will expect, out of the statistics, just because 3 already told you no, out of the statistics, for those 2, or let's not say those 2, maybe the fourth one, you might expect they might retaliate with the same thing. So a lot of people, in that sense, they stop themselves. They stop themselves at the third person, because now they're looking at these other 2. They might say that they might respond the same way. That's how statistics work.
Yes, but I'm not talking about I can't even say it. Statistics, Lula. I'm talking about personal relationships. I'm not saying I expect this of pastor and the ministers of the church. I'm talking about you, Lula, and me, Kez, that if we are surrounded by individuals in our lives that are speaking in a burnt out way, you're telling me that because of the statistics that I should not even go up to that person and care about what's in their lives?
No.
Because then I wouldn't even go up to you.
Pero entonces te regreso a lo que me estabas diciendo. Te estás enfocando en un grupo muy pequeño.
Pero ese es el grupo donde yo puedo impactar.
I agree. I 100% agree.
Yo no puedo ayudar a todo mundo.
I 100%
Yo nomás
agree.
puedo enfocarme en el grupito
Yes.
donde Dios me ha puesto. Y en esas personas, tal vez de las 5, las 4, they're like, dude, move on. I don't even need your help. Why are you even coming to me? But that one person who could leave church and not want anything to do with the Lord because they were so burnt out and nobody took the time to check with them, that's still a success
Pero
for me.
entonces te regreso a lo que me acabas de decir. No esperes que porque tú lo harías, todos lo van a hacer.
No, I agree.
Entonces,
This is my personal thing.
ajá. No,
And I mentioned that. I said, I believe that the church should have more compassion for people who are going through burnout seasons.
Y mi respuesta
Does that
fue-
mean that everybody's going to do it?
no, y mi
I don't.
respuesta fue that when we have done it, we have been met with, no, why are you doing
And
it?
that's going to be everybody's personal decision. But I'm also speaking out of example, Dula. I went through a burnout season, and who reached out to me? Do you know?
I did.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So where would I have been if I didn't have someone who took the time to walk with me through a season where I was
No.
broken?
Yes.
That's why my mentality is the
No,
way that it is
and
because of my personal experience.
And I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you. But not everyone has a Lula.
I agree.
And
But
not
I
everyone
could be their Lula.
And not everyone
to the few people that are
Yes,
in my circle.
100%.
And maybe someone listening could be someone else's Lula to their
100%,
circle.
100%.
That is my point.
100%, 100%. Pero también, I don't. Okay,
I don't understand why you're saying because of the high statistic that this doesn't work. We shouldn't try.
No. I don't think I'm explaining myself. It was just an example. It was just an example of like, si ya es normal que si a 10 personas you reached out and 9 you were met 9 times with no, I'm okay. A la 10 ya no vas a hacer nada.
I
A la
guess,
10th ya
I
no
guess
vas a
for
hacer
me,
nada.
I haven't had a lot of experiences like that, Lula.
No,
I personally haven't. When I've spoken to someone who has had burnt out symptoms, I have never had a situation where someone has been offended with me. I'm sorry, but that hasn't been my reality.
Okay, good. Pero entonces, that's what I'm saying. Like as a church, because you were the one that brought it up as a church.
Yes.
There.
As individuals,
As
as a church.
As a church, right?
We are the church.
We are the church. So when the church has done it, in not just the church, but even when leaders have done it, they have been met with, no, I'm okay. And now there's this awkward.
So you're speaking for the whole congregation.
Yes. Now there's this awkward thing of like, pues me quitaron. Y now there's someone offended. And that's the majority, at least what I've seen. Now, on a personal level, when you have a friend that can actually be honest with you and tell you, you know what, yes,
Right.
I'm tired, that's completely different.
And that's
Kes.
what I'm referring
That's
to.
completely different.
I'm not
Entonces,
speaking
That's
of
what I was
leadership.
not understanding.
I'm not speaking, that's what I mentioned. I do not
Porque
expect
for me, church-
pastor to go do this. You know, I don't expect the ministerial body. Although, do I think that would be beneficial? I do. Just like
But
in
earlier-
any job,
but earlier
there's
you were mentioning-
evaluations, there's quality control, there's all of these things that are maintaining, you know, someone's work ethic. I do think that's a benefit. But not every church is that advanced and has individuals that are watching, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? Or blah, blah, blah. And so I'm speaking as far as the church in terms of me, in terms of individuals who
Right.
are impacting their own little circles. That's what I'm referring to. Ultimately, in this topic of burned out, I think that one of the main things that I also want to mention is how dangerous burnt out seasons are. Not everybody has a positive story where out of a burnout season, they went through it and they came out of it strong, or they took a break and then they came back.
I think
a lot
that-
of people leave the church because of a burnt out season.
Yes, and that's up to them. That's their personal conviction, really. But I do think también I do think that sometimes it's unfair when we, again, another word that it's kind of triggering is the word seasons, because it's like you don't want to be invalidated because of what your season is. I also don't want to be invalidated because you don't understand me because you're not in my season.
I don't
right?
understand.
And no, I don't understand because yes, I'm not married and I don't have kids, but I do understand commitment.
You can understand general things, but I don't think it's wrong to say that because one is not in a certain season, one doesn't fully understand everything that entails. I cannot pretend to understand what it feels like to be a mother.
100%. 100%. I agree. But again,
and I don't think it's fair to say that commitment for someone who is in a different season is the same for someone who is in a different season. I don't think that's fair.
No.
We don't know what that responsibility looks like. Again, I do think your yes should be yes. And I do think your no should be no.
That's all I'm saying.
Regardless of what season
That's all
you're
I'm
in.
saying.
But you're saying that, it's wrong to say essentially that because you're in one season and I'm in one season, that's not right to say. It's like, we're obviously in different seasons and we have different perspectives.
No. What I'm saying is that if we're in 100%, we're in different seasons. I don't know what that feels like. You might know what it feels like to be on this side
but
because
not
you
really.
already went here.
Lula.
But you're not me, right? But what I'm saying is, si ya dije que sí, me quedo. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It has never been about you having family and no. ¿Quién en su sano juicio le va a decir a otra persona, es que prefieres a tus hijos?
No, claro.
No, o sea,
I think ¿verdad? We agree, but we don't agree. I don't get it.
I think again, my issue is language. My issue has always been language and the manipulation that happens with language.
I don't think everybody's out to manipulate.
No, 100% no.
I think that's just what people say, and I also do, and we've talked about this in other podcasts. We've talked about this, I think, in one where we talked about sacrifice. I don't think that we know what that means. And I don't think that we enjoy sacrifice. And we think that in our Christian walk, we're not going to sacrifice. So I agree. I do agree that that's something that is wrong for the people in the church, that they don't want to serve and they don't want to have any cost.
I think that's actually another root of why we have burned out, because we don't have a lot of people that help. Yeah. You know why? Because no one wants to sacrifice. Because
no one wants to sacrifice, and then a lot of people are like, I don't want that to happen to me. I've heard that. I've heard people say, no,
what is that?
¿Para qué me voy a meter al ministerio? Para que yo esté hablando mal, para que yo esté molesta con todo el mundo, para que nada me esté feliz, pase el evento, pasa la decoración, pasa lo que sea. Why am I going to get into that?
Pero entonces volvemos a la spiritual maturity. Porque así como se puede pensar así también puedes pensar, yo puedo ser el cambio. Yo puedo ser diferente.
I agree.
Yo puedo empezar a delegar. Veo una necesidad y voy a hacer algo por ella.
Yeah.
¿Verdad? Entonces, también, a lo que voy es, no puedes ganar. No vamos a ganar. Nunca vamos a ganar. Nunca vamos a ganar. Ni yo en todo esto, ni tú en tu situación. ¿Por qué? Porque al final del día, yo pienso, a pesar de que no es bíblico un balance, de todas maneras, si vamos a empezar a usar esta ideología de que mis boundaries y mis limits y todo eso, entonces sí tiene que haber un balance.
Sí, I do agree.
Right?
I do think
entonces,
it's in our context, I do think balance is a thing.
En our context, tiene que haber un balance. Entonces, donde tú digas, ¿sabes qué? Quiero ayudar, pero no puedo pasar de esta línea. O no puedo, o sea, o por ejemplo, lo que yo he visto mucho es de que digo que sí and I don't follow through. Porque se me vino algo, lo que sea, y está perfecto. Pero como dices tú, cuando ya es un patrón, entonces ya empiezas a decir, esta persona es así. No fue una one-time occasion. This person is who he is or who she is or whatever. Entonces, that's where I'm having a hard time. That's where I have a hard time giving people some benefit of the doubt.
For you, it's always been commitment.
Commitment.
You keep it, you don't. I think my perspective in approaching this whole thing is that, one, burnout is a real thing.
100%.
There's various reasons why people enter into burnout. I personally think it's very dangerous. I think that as friends, maybe that's the better word, the better language, we do have a responsibility to check on fellow leaders.
100%.
And I also believe that a lot of people are in that situation and don't know how to say no to certain things. And I would also like to say that it is okay to say no.
Yes.
It is okay
Yes.
to step away from certain ministries. I do think that even if there's a need in a church, however large your church is, I don't think a person should be involved in no more than 2 ministries. That's my personal conviction. I don't think that it's something that you can truly do excellently, because I go back to, and again, my experience, you're everywhere and nowhere. You're not specializing in anything. You're only, okay, I'll fill in here, I'll fill in there, I'll fill in. Now, I'm not talking about, okay, I taught the children's ministry one time. That's not you being in that ministry. I'm talking about sitting in leadership boards, multiple leadership boards. I don't think that's healthy. I think that can eventually cause burnout.
Absolutely.
And I think that we have to have wisdom. And so, again, in this whole episode,
Why did we disagree? I don't know.
No, honestly, I think it's great that we do, because Lula and I tend to always be on the same thread of thought, you know, for a lot of things. And I do think it's healthy to disagree. I think it's healthy not to see things eye to eye. I think it's okay to be in different seasons. I'm trying to trigger her. And I do think that sometimes it's important that one makes their own conclusion as to what's going to be beneficial for them. You might be listening.
It is a conviction.
And it's a conviction.
It is a conviction. And like all convictions, it would only come to you specifically.
Yeah.
To you specifically, you know? I don't know. Maybe in a year when I get married,
she's gonna be
I'll
like,
be
you know what?
differently.
I can't make it.
I'm in a different
I need to
season.
make it to brunch, and so don't ask me. And I'm gonna be like, let's cut to that video again.
I'm in a different season.
We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We love you guys. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.